So last week, there was a ton of college football news for us to talk about, whether talking about the spring games, the visitors at the spring games, or all the movement in the transfer portal. We were busy, but in all of that excitement, we missed something. And because of that, this Monday, we need to double back and talk about it because one of the nation's top players, one of the nation's top linemen, Knijeah Harris, released their top six, and we have got to break it down because this is going to be an incredibly impactful battle, one that I think is going to pique the interest of a lot of those in the college football world. But with that being said, we need to break it down, and before we do, y'all know the drill. I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Y for yes, N for no. Are you hopeful that your favorite institution will be doubling down and adding in more talented pieces such as Knijeah Harris to your offensive line class? And let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed this content, like and comment down below, as those interactions, though seemingly small, are incredibly impactful to content creators such as myself in both getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But with all that being said, we need to break this down. And like we always do when we're talking about these top recruits, before we start breaking down why I think this battle is so intriguing and the layers in this battle, we first need to understand the institutions present. And in Knijeah Harris's top six, in no particular order, we have the Oklahoma Sooners, the Alabama Crimson Tide, the Texas A&M Aggies, the Florida Gators, the Miami Hurricanes, and the Michigan State Spartans. So, six institutions that all fan bases involved need to be very excited that they made it to this point. Knijeah Harris is a top player in the nation, a top 300 overall player, and a top 20 interior offensive lineman in all of high school football. So whenever you're talking about a top 300 player overall, already that's someone who you want in your class. But if that individual also happens to be an interior offensive lineman who's a top 20 at his position, oh, well, that just further extends why you would want him in your class. I talk at length. I talk until I'm blue in the face about trenches and the need to recruit well in the trenches. And I'm going to talk until I'm more blue because it is that important. And you can never have too many talented offensive linemen. It takes some time for a lot of these guys to come in and develop, though that's not always the case. Just simply is the case more often than not. But we've talked about what he gives these institutions. What do these institutions give him? If we start with Oklahoma, you have Bill Bedenbaugh. Bill Bedenbaugh has been a steady force in terms of development, not only at the collegiate level, but then being able to point at guys he's had in college that have then gone on to have successful NFL careers and lasting NFL careers. That's hard to argue with, and because of that, that's absolutely going to be used in the pitch, and deservedly so. Plus, there's a lot of excitement around the Oklahoma Sooners right now. Some questions with a new head coach, with a new staff, and that's only natural, but even those that ask the questions at some base level probably have a pretty good feeling that Oklahoma is going to be just fine. For Alabama, it's Alabama. We don't really need to say too much. As great as a job as a lot of institutions do in the nation at developing talent, Alabama's rate of development, when you actually break down the numbers and do a statistical analysis, they just lap the field in terms of what they're able to do in getting guys and sending them into the NFL. There's really not another institution that does it at the same level. And offensive line play is a big need for Alabama right now, and they're going to be using it to all of these prospects, so it is something we have to watch. Texas A&M, whether you love them or hate them, look, they're doing great things on the recruiting trail right now, and one area you can't take anything away from them is their offensive line play the past few seasons. It's been stellar. They had a great offensive line 2 seasons ago. Last season, if you remember, I had to eat crow because I was sitting here around this portion of the offseason talking about how I had questions about Texas A&M's offensive line. I didn't know how they were going to be able to rebound after the senior group they just lost. All those questions were answered, and amply so. Texas A&M's offensive line continues to be a strong part for them. It's going to be interesting to see them this year, but after what they did last year, I'm not going to be the one to doubt them and have to eat crow again. I learned my lesson. So Texas A&M does have something very real to offer, and whenever you see all these talented players going somewhere, it excites recruits. They want to be a part of that, so we do have to watch A&M. They're recruiting at such an elite level right now. For Florida, you have the fact that he can stay in the state and be a part of a team that's really trying to turn it around. You have a new head coach there with Billy Napier. You're really trying to get a new identity at the Florida Gators. And if you're Billy Napier, you can use that as a pitch, saying to Knijeah Harris, hey, you can help us establish a new identity more conducive to success, and that's going to be a pitch we have to see. For Miami, you have a lot of the same things I just talked about with Florida, being that it's an in-state school, but also you can take it a level up because Mario Cristobal is a former offensive line guy himself. Not only do you have Cristobal, but you have Mirabal, who followed Cristobal from Oregon, so that's really a double down, and we cannot sleep on that. Because if Miami is able to hit the ground running in terms of recruiting, they're going to be a team to watch. And Michigan State has been a steady force in college football for pretty much all of our lives. We can't really say anything negative about Michigan State. They constantly do well, and with what they've been able to do over the past few years, there has been excitement generated there, and they have been able to develop guys and send them to the next level. With Michigan State, you have the future of trying to compete in the Big Ten, trying to take the place of Michigan for the season Michigan just had, and then trying to catch a team like Ohio State. So all of these institutions have something to offer, and that makes it so intriguing. But one of the other areas we need to talk about when we're talking about the most basic layer in all of this is where he currently plays his high school football, which is at IMG. And just like we talk about with the mantra of iron sharpens iron, that same logic applies to IMG. IMG is one of the top premier programs in the nation. And whenever you're talking about players coming from there, you just kind of have an understanding that they're going to be well coached. And certainly that applies to Knijeah Harris. So those are all things that you love to see. How he's ranked, his body, his size, his athleticism, and the coaching he's received up to this point allow you to have a ton of faith in the ability he has and what he can do going forward. But what are some other areas of intrigue? If we peel back the first layer, what's underneath it? And one of the most intriguing things about this is if we look at the top 6 teams for Knijeah Harris, 2/3 of them are currently or will be going to the SEC. Oklahoma's move to the SEC is on the horizon, and when you look at this, it's just as advantageous to have Knijeah Harris blocking for you as it is not to go against Knijeah Harris. But another layer of intrigue in all of this happens to be around the state he resides in, because one of the schools that's not in the SEC, Miami, also kind of has a similar logical line that we can apply to it. Even though they're not in the SEC, they want bragging rights for what they can do in their own state in terms of recruiting. And one of the things that makes it so important is they're breaking in a new coaching staff. And Mario Cristobal is a great head coach, but he's also been lauded as a phenomenal recruiter. And these battles are ones that you really want to be able to win, especially if you're already in the state, and especially if you're known as an offensive line guy. But also in the state of Florida is the Florida Gators, also going after Knijeah Harris, who, oh yeah, by the way, they just so happen to be breaking in a new head coach as well in Billy Napier. And all the bragging rights I just talked about with Mario Cristobal, well, Billy Napier would like those bragging rights as well. So the state of Florida, because of the new coaches there, those two guys are going to be going at each other. But we also have to remember, the state of Florida is an incredibly important one in college football altogether. Look, whenever we're talking about the most talented states in the nation in terms of high school recruits, we talk about Texas a lot, and deservedly so. In this year's top 300 per 24/7 Sports, Texas can claim 50 of those prospects, which is head-spinning. But Florida can claim 57 of those prospects in the top 300, and they would have 58, but number 58 sits at 304 in the nation. That's how loaded the state of Florida is. And teams have been able to go in there and pretty much will pick at will who they would like out the state of Florida. But that's why it's so important not only for Billy Napier, but Mario Cristobal to be able to put some sort of fence around that state. But it's going to be equally important for Nick Saban, for Brent Venables, for Jimbo Fisher, for all parties involved, Mel Tucker, to break down those barriers and keep that pipeline to the Sunshine State alive and well, especially with an institution such as IMG being there. And just like I said, as much as you want to keep that healthy pipeline in the state of Florida, you really want that pipeline to IMG, especially as I talked about the coaching they give these kids and the fact that they're after the top high school players in the nation. So you already know when you look at a player from IMG, they've been coached up well, they've practiced against the best. That's a player that's got intriguing talent, and therefore you want that connection. So with Knijeah Harris, it's really like a double down. You get to keep a pipeline to the state of Florida, but you also get a pipeline to IMG. A double win if you're an institution that lies outside of the state of Florida, but if you're Billy Napier or you're Mario Cristobal, those are wins that are incredibly necessary to your future, to you being able to lock down your state and to be able to turn around the future that you could have. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of this goes, but that's why I say Knijeah Harris is an incredibly impactful recruiting battle, not only because of the talent he possesses, but the institutions involved, with 2/3 of them being or heading to the SEC. Then you have Miami, who wants bragging rights over Florida and Florida State. Keeping a kid like this home would be huge for Mario Cristobal, who's also an offensive line guy. And then you have Michigan State. Michigan State surprised everybody a few seasons ago with their use of the transfer portal. And they're a team that definitely needs to continue trending in the direction they have been, especially when you look at what Ohio State is doing on the recruiting trail. My goodness gracious. Though it should surprise nobody, Ohio State recruits with the best of them, but they, once again, are off to another really quick start in this recruiting class, and they've done that the past few seasons. If you look back at these past few recruiting cycles, Ohio State jumps out real quick, and it's going to be interesting to see how they do this year. So, with all that being said, hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking about this battle in particular, because all of these institutions really want a talent such as Knijeah Harris, and it's going to be incredibly interesting to see who ultimately wins the battle. That's it. See ya.